Hey everyone, welcome to my review of Atelier Ryza 3. I'm actually a big fan of the franchise, so let's see how this third one stacks up. Now, for the sake of this, I'll just be showing some early game footage of Ryza 3, some cutscenes, a little bit of gameplay, no spoilers that you wouldn't get if you didn't play like the first 30 minutes, because I don't want to ruin it for everyone, because I do love the franchise. So how's the story? Again, in broadest terms, it is the final part of the trilogy. It picks up a little bit after Ryza 2. It's a couple months later, I believe. Everybody's on summer vacation. Ryza calls in some support because these mysterious islands have appeared off the coast, and everybody's going to try and investigate them. So the game kind of starts with that. Like, the gang's together to go and investigate these mysterious islands. While there, she gets these head pains and hears these voices. And the voices kind of navigate her back to her atelier and have her make a key. And she doesn't know what the key does or what its purpose is. And the whole game kind of just jumps off from there. I don't want to get too much into it because this is Atelier Ryza, and it is going to be the story is not going to be that important. I never found it all that important in the previous two entries, but you know, if you're into that kind of thing, I don't want to take that away from you. The games for me have always been more so about the characters and like their interactions and, you know, the JRPG cliche of the power of friendship. But I like it. I liked the skits. I enjoy the comedy between them. They're all a little older, if not necessarily more mature. Like, if they're childhood friends, they're still going to needle each other. This game has a huge cast. So it brings in a lot of pretty much everyone from the first game, most of the characters in the second game, and still introduces more characters that are specific to this third game. And overall, I think they all work. I don't think there was anybody who was like, oh, get them off the screen. But to the game's credit, it never forces you to use anyone in battle that you don't want to use. So how is the battle system in here? Well, the combat system, it's pretty much the same. You know, it starts slow and it opens up as you develop. All those things you're used to from the second game, they're all there, right? So if you played the second game, you're in good hands. If you played the first game, there might be a few added things that you're like, oh, I didn't know this. But if you played the first and jumped to the third, just play the second. Exploring and gathering are pretty much the same. There's not a lot of changes there, especially if you're familiar with the second game. They don't do I don't really think they do anything different, or at least nothing that felt different to me. So if they did make some changes, they were subtle enough as to go unnoticed by myself. So how do I think about the game overall? Well, first of all, there's a lot of stuff I really liked. Like I said, big fan of the characters, big fan of the introductions of them, big fan of just like tons of their interactions. Like, I think it all works, and they've always been very good as a franchise. Or this is the only Atelier games I played, but as I've heard, for this trilogy, they've been very good with their character handling, and I've enjoyed that. Not to say all the skits are perfect. You know, sometimes if you play it like I do, some of them are going to appear a little bit out of order. I don't know if that's necessarily true, or if I was just still kind of burned by my experience with Tales of Arise, where a lot of those sketches just appeared out of sequence. But overall, a lot of fun, a lot of nonsense stuff, not everything super important. I enjoyed most of that. I enjoyed the sense of exploration, of course. Every time I get like a new ore or item or anything, I immediately go back to my atelier and I micromanage the heck out of all my gear, which is probably why these games take me a pretty long time, because I'm just always like, ooh, I can increase this or I can increase that. And the game gives you the freedom to do that. You don't have to play it the way I did, which is going to lead me into probably my biggest criticism of this one, is that it is very big. It is huge. There are multiple regions. I won't go into it, but anyone who's played like the Atelier games know that, like, all right, exploration, it's usually a little more contained in one area, and you kind of like have that sense of community in this one. This one's a little bit more of like a globe-trotting adventure, which I guess is as close to a spoiler as I'll get. So it did make the world seem a little too big for me. I like my Atelier games to feel a little bit more like a mix between like Dragon Quest and Stardew Valley, and a little less like Xenoblade Chronicles. This game felt a lot like Xenoblade Chronicles for me. A lot of running around, a lot of grabbing stuff, a lot of traversal, and that was kind of a bummer. It was not my favorite thing. And because there's so much to do, and the way I play the game, which I agree, it could be completely my fault, but it could also be a design flaw, is it just took me so long. It took me so long. I like my Atelier Ryza games to be about 40 hours, right? Like, including my goofing off and doing stuff like that. I like them to be a casual game for me. I swear to God, I think this one took me probably 80, if not more. And again, could be the way I'm playing it, but it just could be how the game is put together. There's a lot of backtracking, a lot of like go out here, come on back, go out here, come on back. And it just started to grate on me a little bit from time to time, especially because being used to the run times of the previous games and the events in this one, I thought I was close to being finished, but I was not. And it just kept going and going and going. And I was glad to play the game, but every time I was like, all right, let's ramp up to something. Be like, no, go do this. And again, I don't have to do those quests, but I feel compelled to. By my very nature, I feel compelled to do the quest presented. So there was a lot of that for me. The other thing that I kind of found a bummer in this one, I was not that big of a fan of the soundtrack in this. That was a big disappointment for me because I really liked the soundtrack in the second game. As a matter of fact, I would tell my friends and family, I would send them links to the soundtrack from the second game, and they were just like, all right, it sounds great. I'm like, yeah, but oh man, there was so much more emotion in that. But then again, it could just be me, but I didn't really care for that. I thought some of the translating in this game was a little awkward. And of course this is going to happen with every JRPG. They're not going to get 100% of the things right, but in this one I noticed like just a little bit more of it, and some of the sentences, that the way like characters were talking to each other did not quite mesh. So that bothered me, but that's, like I said, small thing overall. Yeah. So did I like the game? Yeah, I liked the game. Do I recommend it? Absolutely, I recommend it. Should you go into the game knowing it's going to take you probably about twice as long as the previous like Atelier Ryzas? Yeah, because if I had known it was going to be an 80-hour game, I would have spent my time a little more judiciously. I probably would have taken breaks because it started to get a little repetitive, and I could feel myself getting a little like frustrated and just like push forward, push forward, push forward. But as a series, as a trilogy, it does nail the ending, and it continues like that spirit of optimism that you want. I won't tell you how it ends, but you're not going to play an Atelier game looking for like a deep, dark, depressing game. You're going to look for like optimism and like what's next on our heroes' journeys and things like that. And I think the game does a very good job with that. I was very satisfied. I liked where the characters ended up. So if you have the chance to pick these games up, I mean, they're not like the biggest budget games. They still, because they're Gust and like Koei Tecmo, they still are always on sale. They're always like $60. So if you can find it on sale for like 30, which they rarely do, but keep an eye out. $30 is an appropriate price for about them. If you really like them, pay the 60. I did. Well, that's all I have to say on this. So thank you so much for listening, and go play some RPGs. They're the best.